Greetings, Darklings and Cats. Welcome to the first live recording of the CreepyPasta with your host, me, Cat. What we're gonna do is we're going to play a little thing that I like to call CreepyPasta Roulette. So, without further ado, let's get started. And it looks like our first story is called Hidden Maze. And that one's by, it seems to be by S.E. Helsinger. Alright, Hidden Maze. Dried husks scratched their arms as they squeezed through the narrow aisles of corn. Finding the entrance was a miracle, as the pathways are barely discernible from the rows of planted corn. Every year, the old man, Hanky, built a corn maze for the local kids, but hides the entrance. Farmer never had any children of his own, and started the maze tradition as a way to bond with the neighborhood children. It was bragging rights in this town to find and complete Old Man Hanky's maze before the corn's harvest. Anna, do you know how quick it gets dark now? This is taking too long. We have plenty of light and plenty of time. Besides, we can always follow someone else out. Who, Anna? We've been in here over an hour, and I haven't seen anyone, or heard anyone for that matter, in the last 45 minutes. We could always call Charlie. I'm sure he'd come and find us and show us out, Anna suggested. I already tried calling him twice. He didn't answer. I texted him and told him to call me back. Anna looked around at the sea of corn stalks. It was impossible to tell where they'd already been and which direction was out. Just climb on my shoulders and see if you can figure out which direction we should be going. Sydney's cheerleading skills were finally of practical use. She took a boost from Anna's clasped hands and hopped onto her shoulders. Sydney could hardly see over the corn, but the smoke from the bonfire billowed as a beam of hope. Anna, I can see the smoke from the bonfire. I know which way we need to go out, and I think I saw some corn moving. Maybe those people know the way out. Harvest time is only a few days away. The girls did not want to be the only ones not to finish Old Man Hanky's maze. Finding the entrance alone took hours. Now, if they could only find their way out. As they headed for the smoke, voices became audible. The other last-minute maze goers must be nearby. Hello, do you know the way out of here? Anna yelled. No response. I do. The meek voice materialized from behind them with no warning. A small boy, no older than 9, stood just inside the corn stalk, staring at the girls. Hi there. We've been in here almost 2 hours. Can you help get us out? Anna asked the boy, as Sydney shot her an angry gaze. Sure, my daddy doesn't like when I cheat, but I like helping, the boy chirped. You're a sweet little boy. Do kids get lost in here a lot? Yes, most people get lost in our maze. Our maze? Is that why you know the way out so well? Yeah, my dad built it. I helped. I like helping. Looking more enthusiastic, the boy took Anna by the hand and started on his way. Unmoving, Sydney called out, Can I have a word with you? What's up, Sydney? The little boy just said his daddy built the maze. I thought this is Old Man Hanky's farm. He doesn't have any kids. So what? Maybe the kid and his dad helped out. What's it matter anyways? He knows the way out. He gives me the creeps, Anna. Did you notice how he came out of nowhere? Did you just watch Children of the Corn or something? You're tripping, Anna smirked. Whatever. I just want to get out of here. Anna walked back to the boy and asked him to lead the way. He continued on silently, walking slowly and methodically. Without hesitation, he made turn after turn down long stretches of barely visible pathways. The zigzagging seemed to take the girls further and further from the plumes of smoke still faintly visible in the darkened sky. Anna asked the boy. He looked over his shoulder with a demented smile. Of course I do. We have only a little further to go. Daddy will be so glad to see you. Sydney noticed the the drops of sweat forming on Anna's forehead, and reached out for her phone again. This time Charlie answered. She turned around and whispered into the phone, "Charlie, where have you been? We're lost and need your help. Need you to help us finish this maze. We're following this kid and we're not even close to being out. He's freaking me out." "I'm not sure what you're talking about. What maze are you at?" "What do you mean, Charlie? Old Man Hankey's maze. What else would I be talking about?" Sydney asked, shooting a confused look over to Anna. "Old Man Hankey has been in the hospital for a while now. He hasn't been able to do a corn maze this year." Sydney quickly hung up her phone and turned around, but the boy was gone. Sydney turned and ran through the corn back where they came from, Hannah at her heels. They ran into the cramps in their sides, forced them to stop. Then they heard the boy's voice again and saw his shadow just inside the corn like before. "You can run, girls. I won't stop you. But I know the way out. You're the one who's lost. Besides, Daddy doesn't like when I cheat. He likes when you find him on your way out. It's more exciting that way." Alright, it looks like that one's done, so let me go back over to the website and hit the random story button again and see what we get. Alright, so it looks like our second word. Alright, so it looks like our second story will be Homeward, and it is by Nick O'Callaghan. Homeward. He stumbled. He knew the way, or at least he was reasonably sure he did, but he had a hard time staying on track. He fell. He decided to stay there for a minute and catch his breath. When he got up, a moan escaped his lips. He didn't hurt, exactly, but he was frustrated. He looked up at the afternoon sun and didn't remember it's getting so late. Where'd the time go? He just shrugged it off. He just shrugged and walked it off, and walked home. That was his thought process. I have to get home. He's been drunk before, of course. There were times where he couldn't remember events from a big night. Remember events from a night of revelry. But he'd never had a substantial blackout before. For the life of him, he couldn't remember what had happened between doing shots at the bar and stumbling around now, at least 16 hours later. Was he asleep? Where was his friends? Why did he have only one shoe? He thought about asking the woman sitting on the park bench. Asking what, he forgot. He was so confused, but he felt that he couldn't possibly still be drunk. My God, he thought, am I sick? The lady on the park bench was pretty. He moved in her direction. She looked past him. He loomed over her, and she continued to ignore him. "Hey," he tried to say, but his words came out as a gasp. Tongue-tied, he stood there trying to ask a simple question without appearing to be a fool or a simpleton. He just needed to use her phone, if she had one. He grew nervous and agitated. It was like he was stuck in a dream, and he couldn't get out the words. All she did was dismissively grunt in his general direction. He knew when to take a hit, so he kept on walking towards home. He wasn't tired, but annoyed and hungry. There was a shadowy spot underneath an old oak. He liked how the moss hung to give it shade. He sat down, leaning against the trunk. He looked back towards the hotel, but couldn't see it. Where was his friends? Where were his friends? What had happened to the bachelor party? He didn't remember walking so far, but things had been a mess since waking up. His eyes wandering the streets around him, that he thought it odd how there was absolutely no vehicle traffic. Cars stopped in some places, and the roads were completely clear in others. Vaguely he registered the sounds of alarms and horns blaring in the distance. He saw a lot of folks walking, not seemingly in a hurry and completely unconcerned about the heat of day. He drifted off, tired of thinking, tired of trying to remember and piece it all together. Awareness flowed back to him on the beams of a full moon. He was walking again, just as confused as earlier. At least he was no longer hungry. He found it odd that he was not barefoot, but it didn't dwell on him. He had to get home. He smiled as he remembered being this drunk once before. He was led back to the hotel from a night on River Street by his inebriated friends. He became obsessed with the fact that his wife was missing. Where did she go? Is she okay? He yelled, and he let out to find her at a full trot. Keystone Cops moments later followed, where a Keystone Cop moment later A Keystone Cop's moments followed. A Keystone Cop's moment followed, wherein he ran circles around the old weathered brick building that housed a nightclub, chased by four of his closest and dearest. When he finally stopped running, he found her safe and sound hugging a lamppost. The almost sober of the group ushered the concerned parties to the suite before the police could be involved. Lost in thought, he tripped over something on the shoulder of the interstate. Wait, the interstate? Headlights in the distance illuminated his path. He looked down at what nearly made him fall. Couldn't tell for sure what it was, but it was slippery and smelled delicious. A food truck accident, he thought. He shambled on towards the headlights, intending to wave them down for a ride. He reached out to them, waving his hands. The car swerved towards him and didn't slow down. Confusion turned to anger when a side mirror grazed his arm. He spun around and landed in the ditch. The car kept going, red taillights in the distance, weaving around other vehicles in the dark. Anger added to itself to the perpetual confusion and frustration. He tried to get up, but found his left arm uncooperative. He roared in fury and slowly got back to his feet. He looked down, and in the moonlight, his arm hung limply. It was twisted and obviously broken. Wow, I must be really blitzed, he easily thought. There was no pain. He walked on. Slowly, the miles melted away as surely as his thoughts. The blackouts became more common, words became disjointed images in his mind, and soon the only two things that he knew were hunger and the need to go home. Time began to blur. Discomfort became a constant companion, and anger colored everything with a hazy white film. Days became nights, and strangers shambled beside him. He didn't speak. After it became obvious that they would ignore him, he began to return the favor. He finally recognized the exit ramp for home. He left the pack of weary travelers that had both welcomed and spurned him, and he refused to get rest until he could do so in his own bed. His wife and children would be worried sick, and the missus would probably be angry that he hadn't called. She never really wanted him to go off to Savannah with the boys for the bachelor party anyway. These thoughts seeped in and leaked out just as quickly, and it was hard to concentrate. He vaguely remembered being upset that she hadn't come down looking for him, but these complex ideas, too, just became images. Home, hunger, eat when I get there, rest when I get home, one foot in front of the other, fall down, get up, keep going home. Hunger, her, love, longing for her, longing for home, blackout. He couldn't get inside. The front door wouldn't open. He knocked with his good arm and beat against the door with both arms, in a slow-motion frenzy as frustration mounted and became anger. Ever present under his rolling emotions, that hunger kept that hunger kept gnawing at him. "I'm home, let me in," he said, but in reality that was only a growl escaped his dried, cracked lips. He heard crying from inside. Something was wrong. He needed to feed, flared hot white, and his fury peaked. He knocked louder and yelled for her to let him inside. His arms flailed against the door, and his growls became a constant moan. Finally, the door opened. There she was. He saw a flash of light, but never realized it was the flash of a muzzle. The sound of thunder that echoed into the pines and elms surrounded their secluded country house never reached his ears. He finally stopped walking, moaning and longing. "There will be others. Close the door and let's get the barricade back in place before they get here. We need to bury him, Mama. He's been missing since this thing started, but now he's home and we need to take care of Dad." "That's not your dad anymore, baby. He died weeks ago." Under the cover of darkness, as quietly as they could, they laid him down to rest next to the other family members. Each of them in that shallow makeshift cemetery had been driven by Each of them in that long, shallow makeshift cemetery had been driven by longing and hunger. Each of them had been looking for a missing piece of themselves that could only be found back home. Alright, that is the end of that story. Let's see what we get next. Alright. So the next story that we will be reading is called Chat Room A, and it is written by... Well, it doesn't seem to have an author. Strange. I'm trying to find the author on this website, but it's not there. Okay. Well, let's just begin after I take a drink. Chat Room A. It was the summer of 2019. The 16-year-old Thomas Mitchell and his family went on a trip to their cabin in the Stillwater State Forest of Montana. I don't know why I had a weird accent there for a second. Okay. Cabin in their Stillwater State Forest of Montana. He had two younger brothers, Felix, who was 10, and Michael, who had just turned 14. They usually spend their time hiking and visiting nearby places during the day and playing with their Nintendos in the evening/night. There wasn't any Wi-Fi in the cabin due to the fact that Thomas's parents wanted the 2 weeks to be free of social media and more focused on family and nature. This, however, didn't mean they couldn't bring their old Nintendos with them to do something in the evening. Their cabin was rather old-fashioned, with it being built in the 1960s, and the fact that there hasn't been any form of renovation since then. Thomas's great-grandfather built it all by himself, and his family was very proud of that. Thomas and his family lived in Seattle, so it was quite a long drive to their cabin. They left early in the morning, and after a few hours, his brother Felix had to go to the toilet, so they stopped at a local gas station. The rest of the family also thought it was a good opportunity to get some snacks and get ready for the rest of the drive. When they arrived, it was already about 11 a.m. in the morning, and the parking lot was pretty busy. All five got out of the car. Thomas's dad, Scott Mitchell, filled their car with gasoline, while Vivian Jones, Thomas's mom, took the three kids to the shop, which was pretty busy. Thomas and Michael went straight to the snacks, and Felix ran towards the restrooms. Vivian waited at the Vivian waited at the restrooms to take Felix to the snacks, where his two older brothers were waiting for him. And when she heard that a random man was asking him questions, Vivian gasped. "Felix, what are you doing? Stop talking to strangers," she yelled. Felix quit talking to the random man immediately and walked toward his mom. Thomas's mom was annoyed but also relieved and took this out on his younger brother. Thomas's mom was annoyed but also relieved and took this out on his youngest brother. Thomas and Michael chuckled. They were both shocked but also kind of entertained. All four didn't think much of it, got their snacks, paid for them, and went back to the car. When Vivian told Scott about what happened, he was also shocked but emphasized that nothing bad happened and that everything was all right. And so they went back to their way. So they went back on their way to their destination. The moment they arrived, it was already 5 p.m. and Scott understood that he had to gather firewood in case it was going to be a cold night. An exact week had passed, and the family had forgotten about the small incident during the trip, and everyone was home from a long and exhausting day of hiking at a local wildlife park. It was an evening like every else, dinner at 7 p.m., then TV until 11 p.m., and everyone went to bed. However, the three had arranged a late-night chat with each other when their parents were asleep. How, you might ask? Well, through Nintendo's old-fashioned chat rooms. They all agreed to meet around 11:30 p.m. in chat room D, and so they did. Thomas, aka Tama 2002, Felix, aka Flying Bat, and Michael, aka MIC 43L, are all three in chat room D. The range of chat rooms is approximately 60 feet, and that was enough for all three, given that the cabin was about half of that in length. Everyone had a separate room. They all slept in rooms that were connected to each other through one long hallway, which on its turn was connected to the living room and the open kitchen. There was only one door, the front door, which connected the terrace to the living room. See, the cabin was on top of a hill, which was about 55 feet long. The hallway consisted of 5 doors. First came the bathroom on the right side, then Thomas's room on the right side next to the bathroom, thirdly Scott and Vivian's bedroom on the left side, lastly Felix's bedroom on the right side across from Michael's bedroom on the left side. An hour into chatting, Thomas heard a branch snap outside. He looked up at the window in his old-fashioned room. Probably just the wind or some animal, he thought to himself. As Michael was typing, Thomas was going through the things he had done and seen today. The ice cream he ate with his family, the bear he saw, another branch snapped. Shit. Thomas's window's wide open, with a fly screen separating him and the outside world. He probably heard it because he's the only one that always leaves his window open at night. Michael had sent a message. Guys, did you see that there's someone in chat room A? Thomas frowned. That's not possible. We're so remote. We only have 2 neighbors down the street, and they're at least 100 feet away. It's probably just a bug. These things are at least 6 years old. Now. This thought raced his mind. He also translated it into a message, and he sent it down to his 2 brothers. Yeah, I agree with Thomas. It's probably just a bug or something, said Felix. But Michael responded with a short, "Are you sure?" which made the other 2 doubt. Tom went in to check and see if there was still someone in chat room A, and sure enough, there was still someone else lurking around. "Should we check it out?" said Thomas. "I don't want to get into trouble," Felix responded shortly. He continued with, "Besides, tomorrow's a big day. Let's cut this short and go to sleep. It was a stupid idea anyway. Fine, go to sleep, but I want to figure this out." "Good night," Michael responded. Felix said goodnight to both of his older brothers, closed his Nintendo, and went to sleep. "So, what do we do now?" Thomas responded. "Let's go to chat room A and see if and tried to make contact, Michael quickly said. After a few minutes, Thomas said, "Are you sure that's such a good idea?" Michael sent a drawn picture of an emoji that pictured a face with rolling eyes. Directly after that, he responded with pussy and left the chat. Thomas's heart was racing. He was becoming uneasy. What if it was a real person? This means that a person was really, really close. Closer than 65 feet, he thought to himself. He figured that his parents were probably already asleep and slowly walked down the hallway towards Michael's room. Thomas knocked. "Come in," Michael said Michael. "What the hell are you thinking? This isn't a game. The person can be close to us. Really close," Thomas yelled. "Shh. Can you keep it down? Or do you want to wake Mom and Dad?" Michael protested. Thomas rolled his eyes. "You're going to bring us all into a dangerous situation, and when you don't stop immediately." But Thomas was already too late. Michael was already talking to the random stranger, whose nickname was Here Now. Thomas saw Michael's screen. Thomas saw Michael's screen. "Are you out of your mind? He could be literally 10 feet away from us." The stranger had only sent a few cryptic messages like, "Nighttime is coming," and "The forest canopy is getting thicker and thicker for you." Suddenly they could hear a loud banging coming from the windows of the living room. Both of them froze in fear, terrified for what could happen next. "I warned you this would happen," said Thomas. Michael didn't say anything. He was completely shocked. He closed the chat and powered his Nintendo off. Let's remain calm," said Michael. As Thomas was talking, his anger out on his... I'm so sorry. As Thomas was taking his anger out on his younger brother, Michael was getting tears in his eyes, but couldn't cry because he was frozen with fear and was shocked. Tom couldn't stand it anymore. He went into the living room. He quietly went into the living room. He stopped when he had breached the windows with the curtains closed. As he could feel his heartbeat, he slowly pulled away one curtain. The window was smeared with a dark substance. It was hard to make out shapes and colors at first, but his eyes quickly adapted to the combination of darkness and moonlight. It became clear that what the substance was. It was blood. Bloody hand marks were made all over the window. Thomas was disgusted and terrified, but as always, he was curious about who or what did this. He put on a raincoat, grabbed a sharp kitchen knife, and put his shoes on and slowly opened the door. When the door was finally open, the frisky air slammed into his face. The only thing he could hear was crickets and the sound of rustling in the bushes down the densely overgrown hill. The viewing platform was clear. Thomas was trying to keep up with his heartbeat, trying to slow it down, but he couldn't when he saw that the small fence gate was opened and was no longer open. When he went back in... I'm sorry, let me reread that sentence because it did not make sense. But he couldn't when he saw that the small fence gate was opened and was no longer open. He went back inside to grab an electric torch and got back outside to finally close the door behind him. He tried to intimidate the intruder by shouting, "Get the hell away, I will call the police. This is our land." But he could barely yell. He was so scared that you could hear it in his voice. After a few months of nothing, he was now at the top of the hill. He had walked all the way down to the place where the car was parked. Even more uncertain than before, he yelled, "Hello?" He could hear an almost unnatural scream, but it was not a scream like you would imagine. It was almost like a growl scream. It was an almost growl-like scream. Thomas was completely freaked out now. He turned around and went back towards the house. He could hear the rustling behind him and knew that it was probably already too late. What was this? Is this how I meet my fate? Thomas was thinking about unimaginably painful ways to die. Then he sprinted towards the terrace of the house, closed the small and low gate, when he had reached the point where he thought he was safe. As he was trying to calm himself down, he could feel a sudden and hard hit on the back of his neck. Bam! Everything slows down and fades to black. Darkness. Alright, that's the end of our third and final story. As I should have explained ahead of time, all of this is recorded in a one go, so it's all technically live. And essentially, I choose the creepypastas by going to the actual website. And on their website, they have this button that's, you choose a random story, and whatever random story pops up, I read. And this is before I even know what the story is about. Like, I haven't read through it at all. I just read it all in one go. So it's a surprise to know what the story is about for all of us. If you're into this, then I will be doing the same thing next week. And so, for now, this is the end of the first episode. So thank you for sticking around, and I will see you in the next one.